So what if the system we live in is eating itself alive? It's a really provocative idea, and it's the core of Nancy Fraser's theory of cannibal capitalism. It's a striking metaphor, right? And today, we're going to unpack what it might just tell us about the world's biggest crises.
Really? Fraser's whole theory kicks off with this one pretty unsettling question. What if capitalism, the engine of our modern world, isn't just creating wealth, but is actually destroying its own life support systems? What if it's on a path of self-destruction? Answering this question could reframe almost every major crisis we face today.
And here it is, the core of her argument, right from the source. It really brings to mind the Ouroboros, that ancient symbol of a serpent eating its own tail. Fraser argues this is the perfect image for modern capitalism, a system that's just locked in this endless cycle of consuming the very things that keep it going: a healthy society, a stable planet, and even our trust in public institutions.
Okay, so to really get this, we have to start where Fraser does, by expanding our whole definition of what capitalism is. She argues that for a long time we've been looking at it with one eye closed, only focusing on the obvious, economic parts.
So usually when we talk about capitalism, we're looking at it through a purely economic lens, right? Markets, labor, profit, that's the foreground. But Fraser says this view is dangerously incomplete. Her expanded view sees capitalism as a total social order, one that is completely dependent on and kind of parasitic toward a set of essential, non-economic background conditions.
So what exactly are these background conditions? Well, think of them as capitalism's hidden support systems. They're the things the economy absolutely needs to function, but which it doesn't pay for. The system treats them like free, inexhaustible gifts from nature and from society. But as we're about to see, they are definitely not infinite, and they're starting to crack under the strain.
Fraser pinpoints 4 of these critical background domains. She gives them this great name, the hidden abodes of capital, sort of like the invisible workshops that are secretly keeping the whole system running. Let's take a look at what they are.
So here they are. These 4 domains are like the invisible pillars holding up the entire economic system. And Fraser's core argument is that capitalism's relentless drive for profit is systematically, eating away at every single one of them. Let's dig into how.
First up is social reproduction, or let's just call it care. This is all the work, historically done by women, and very often unpaid, that creates and maintains actual people. We're talking raising children, caring for the elderly, cooking, cleaning, providing emotional support, you name it. Without this work, there would be no workers to even show up at the factory or the office. Capitalism depends on it 100%, yet it refuses to value it, which leads to what Fraser calls a crisis of care, just widespread burnout and social depletion.
Second, we have nature. The planet provides the raw materials, the energy, and of course a place to dump all our waste. The system basically treats the Earth like an infinite subsidy, like a business partner that never, ever sends a bill. The costs of pollution in using up resources are externalized. They're just pushed off the balance sheet and onto the planet and, future generations. And this, of course, is what's driving our ecological crisis.
Third is public power. You see, markets don't just spring out of nowhere. They're created and enforced by the state, with laws, contracts, and police. But here's the central paradox. Capital needs the state to exist, yet it constantly works to weaken it by demanding deregulation, tax cuts, and privatization. This hollows out the state's ability to serve the public good, basically cannibalizing democracy from the inside out. And that brings us to the 4th condition, expropriation. This is a heavy one. It refers to the seizure of wealth, land, and labor through pure coercion, historically and presently targeting racialized and colonized peoples. And Fraser is crystal clear about this. This is not just ancient history. It's an ongoing process that provides the cheap inputs, from resources to labor, that fuel the formal economy. This idea is so central, we really need to take a closer look. And this right here, this brings us to one of Fraser's most important contributions. She argues that traditional analysis has always focused on economic exploitation, but it missed its hidden and, frankly, much more brutal twin, expropriation.
Okay, let's break this down because it's super important. Exploitation is what happens to a legally free worker inside the system. Your labor is worth more than your paycheck. But expropriation, that's what happens outside that system, through raw coercion and violence. It's the outright seizure of resources from people who are denied the status of free subjects to begin with.
And this is the part you really got to get. Expropriation is not a relic of the past.
Fraser argues it's the ongoing background process that makes the foreground of legitimate exploitation possible in the first place. The cheap resources and labor seized through coercion are fed directly into the formal economy. The two aren't separate. They are the twin engines of capital accumulation.
So, why does all of this matter? What's the ultimate payoff of this theory? Well, it's that it offers this really powerful, unified lens to see how today's biggest crises are all deeply connected. It allows us to connect the dots.
I mean, think about it. The feminist fight over the crisis of care, the ecological movement to save the planet, the anti-racist fight against dispossession, the democratic movement fighting against state capture. Fraser's theory argues that these are not separate movements at all. They're actually different fronts in the exact same war. The bottom line is, in her view, they're all fighting back against a single cannibalistic logic. They are all pushing back against a system that is consuming its own social, ecological, political, and racialized foundations. They are all reactions to the different ways that the serpent is eating its own tail. And all this leaves us with a really profound and honestly pretty difficult final challenge. The theory suggests capitalism doesn't just exhaust the planet, it exhausts us. It drains our time, our energy, and our capacity for the community and care that we need to organize. So the ultimate question becomes, how do we fight back when the system itself is cannibalizing the very human resources we need to fuel the resistance? That's something to think about. Thanks for joining this explainer.